We have all sorts of interesting football stuff going on. Lewis, if I were to say Shedeur Sanders is going to be the Browns' starting quarterback when this season begins, is that ridiculous?
No, Greeny, you know, it's not ridiculous as long as they are able to. And I heard Dan Graziano talking about this morning earlier on ESPN Radio. Yeah, I listen to it when I'm in my car in the morning. It's all, as long as they can get him enough reps. And it sounds like Kevin Stefanski is aware of the fact that in order to create a real quarterback competition, he has to kind of change some things in terms of the way he divvies out reps during the preseason and during the offseason. If he can compete with Dillon Gabriel, if he can compete with Joe Flacco, he can compete with Kenny Pickett, there's a very good chance that if this is an organic competition with a level playing field, he could be your starter week one. No question about it.
Look, sometimes we attach this number now. He was a fifth-round draft pick, and I understand that there was a reason for that. I'm not pretending it doesn't matter at all. But what I'm saying is if he had been drafted in the second round or the first, which is what we were expecting, then there'd be almost no debate about it, right? We'd be with exactly the same body of work in college and the same skill set. We would absolutely be forecasting him to be the starter, especially, Dan, when you consider the other options they have available.
Right, but he is a fifth-round pick, and there was another quarterback they drafted 2 rounds earlier this year, in addition to Joe Flacco, who helped them get to the playoffs 2 years ago, and Kenny Pickett, who he's in the mix as well. So they have 4 guys. They need to get them all practice reps. Kevin Stefanski, what Lewis was alluding to, he put 7-on-7 drills into the rookie minicamp. Usually rookie minicamp is just, classroom stuff, very basic stuff, nothing really, and in terms of team competition. But he wanted Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel to be able to get some reps at a time of year when they weren't competing with veterans for those reps. So he's very conscious, Stefanski is, of trying to make this as good, as close a competition as possible among all 4 of them.
I'm going down with the ship with my friend Mel Kiper on this one. He is the most underdrafted player that I can ever remember. I genuinely believe if he has a chance, a real chance, he's going to wind up making a run at the starting job there sooner rather than later. All right, the next one. Lewis, I was looking over on ESPNBet.com. The Bears' win total for this year is 8.5 wins. This is at ESPN Bet. They only won 5 games last year. So if someone said they're going to be the most improved team in the league this year, is that ridiculous?
That's not ridiculous at all. Look, I think, last year when we talked about the Bears and specifically offensively and the lack of development that we saw from Caleb Williams, we pointed squarely to Shane Waldron, the former offensive coordinator, and the fact that there just wasn't a good plan on top of the fact that there just wasn't enough surrounding him. Well, all of that has changed this year with Ben Johnson coming in, with the revamping of the interior 3 of the offensive line, and then the work that they did in the draft, Greeny, and we were there on the desk and we saw it. We saw them draft Colston Loveland. We saw them draft Luther Burden, wide receiver, tight end, respectively, to go along with a guy like DJ Moore, and Rome Odunze. This team is loaded offensively. Now it's about putting together a good plan and Caleb living up to his potential that he showed in college, that he showed at Oklahoma, that he showed at USC. And if all that comes together, this could be one of the more explosive offenses in the NFC and in the league overall. Now, I know that's a big leap. People say, hey, look, let's just crawl before we walk. Let's walk before we run. But look, this league, people can go worst to first in a hurry. I'm not saying they're going to go worst to the first in their division, but they will be much improved. One of the most improved teams in the NFL.
Yeah, not at all ridiculous. I mean, look at last year's Washington Commanders, how quickly things can turn around if you put the right people in the right positions. A lot of unknowns with that coaching staff in Chicago, but, they're well regarded, and obviously I think the defense will be good under Dennis Allen. So I think the Bears have a chance, but the division, as you mentioned, is rough. That is rough, and that is going to probably cost them on their win total because they're going to have to fight against those other 3 teams that all made the playoffs last year. Most improved team, I'd be looking more at like a San Francisco or a Dallas, teams we've seen do it and then had their seasons last year done in by injury.
Oh, you mentioned Dallas, did you? Well, isn't that a good segue? So yesterday, A.J. Brown was talking about, of all things, the Eagles' biggest rival, and listen to what he said.
Now, we're going to have to worry about him for sure. Hey, we're going to have to worry about him. No, I like the trade. I do like the trade. I like the competition, and I like Jordan Pickens. I like CeeDee Lamb and that collab, and it's gonna be exciting to watch, bro, because all that does is bring the best out of us. So if we know how they coming, we know we gotta step it up,
Cowboys trading for George Pickens could wind up being one of the most undercovered stories of this entire offseason if he, and it's a huge if, plays up to his enormous potential. Their win total is only 7.5 wins at ESPN Bet. So, Lewis, here's a question I never would have thought I would ask on a show I host, but are we sleeping on the Cowboys? Am I not paying enough attention to the Cowboys?
I don't think so, Greeny. Look, I'm gonna look at this from two sides, okay? There's a reason why, you know, when we're talking about football and we're talking about team building, that it's just not about physical skills and what things look like on paper. And the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers pulled the plug on George Pickens and said, hey, look, instead of like looking at this 3, 4, 5 years down the road and investing the kind of money we, you know, need to invest in a guy like you in order to retain you, meaning an upper echelon wide receiver, you know, we just don't think that the risk and reward is in our favor. So we're going to send you down the road to Dallas. So look, we understand the kind of things that George brings as a high riser, above the rim type of player outside the numbers as a true X wide receiver, a guy who can win one-on-one, who's a quarterback's best friend. But it's more than just that. It's about fitting into that culture, being a positive influencer on that locker room for 17 weeks. Not just for a mini camp, not just for a play here and there, but a guy who's going to show up on time, that who's going to be a force multiplier, who's going to be dependable, who's going to be a good team. Like, all those things are what adds up to you, helping you make a team a contender, not just highlight reel catches.
But you made an interesting point, that they won 7 games last year without their quarterback.
Quarterback got hurt halfway through the season. I'm pretty sure that they've been over 7.5 in every one of Dak Prescott's fully healthy seasons. Then they believe that George Pickens coming into their leadership structure in terms of their locker room, in terms of the quarterback, in terms of CeeDee Lamb, right, they'll get.
All right, in the 2024 Paris Games, Old Glory, the old red, white, and blue once again took home top honors, most medals, 126, most goals, 40. I'm going to go ahead and preemptively add another for the 2028 LA Summer Games because NFL players are expected to be allowed to participate in the Olympics for the first time for flag football. Still hurdles to clear, but player buy-in, not one of them.
The chances of, you know, playing in the Olympics and, you know, getting a gold medal is a dream, you know, just reverting back to being a kid and watching the track and field, you know, meets, watching basketball win the gold medal. So, you know, that's something that as a kid, I always wanted to be a part of.
I hope there's a mercy rule. While the NFL and its players are behind the push for the Olympics, they are split between that and the other push, the tush push, expected to be voted on today whether to continue to allow the play that the Eagles and Bills both ran effectively to the tune of a touchdown or first down. 87% of the time they ran it. 24 of 32 teams need to vote yes on banning the play to disallow it.
Các bạn, chào mừng các bạn đã đến với kênh YouTube của mình. Ngày hôm nay mình sẽ làm một chiếc video, đó là tô màu những sản phẩm, hoa quả, con vật, đồ vật, vân vân. Các bạn chưa biết sản phẩm gì đúng không? Thì hãy xem hết video của mình nhé. Nếu các bạn thích những sản phẩm nào trong những video thì các bạn hãy comment xuống để mình sẽ làm theo nha các bạn. Và bây giờ chúng ta cùng đi tô màu nào.
Thì mình sẽ tiếp tục các bạn.